Guyana's cattle industry is now being given the impetus needed to grow and realize what experts believe to be its significant potential for export earnings for those who approach cattle rearing with the seriousness it requires in terms of investment and management. Currently, the government of Guyana, through the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, GLDA, an arm of the Ministry of Agriculture, has embarked on a pilot project that involves 10 of Guyana's cattle farms. These are spread across the coast of Guyana. These farms have been benefiting from a series of interventions by the GLDA aimed at improving the genetic stock of the cattle on these farms. Embryo transfers, artificial insemination, and the provision of superior breeding bulls to these farms are key among the many interventions to date. However, another key focus of the GLDA is the development of proper pastures, especially as it relates to the farms that are part of its pilot program. Currently, because cattle farmers have never pursued pasture development as part of their management of the herd and the use of supplemental feed utilizing corn and wheat, the turnover time for an animal is approximately 4 years. The GLDA wants that period cut in half. This can be realized through the establishment of proper pastures with the use of antelope as the grass of choice. It is commonly accepted that demand is rapidly increasing for sustainably raised beef and dairy products. Pasture or grass-based livestock production is inherently sustainable as this production system relies on biodiversity and ecological complexity to maintain production without the use of costly inputs. But there are constraints, as is explained by GLDA's CEO, Mr. Nigel Kamabaj.
Our feeding program is mainly forage-based. And for most of you, you will recognize that the forage that we utilize on the coast is antelope grass. We have had contact with a company, Dropseed, and they have been introducing to some of our better farmers some of the other foreign species that we feel do have a place on the coast and with better plate of nutrient so that the time to market could be reduced considerably. And they have introduced to us some hybrid forage in the general panicum and
Mombasa.
Yeah, and Mombasa being panicum maximum, the variety Mombasa. And they've also brought in Brachyra brisanta, foreign species that we have worked with previous, but they are a whole lot more improved now. And so we will be we'll be working with the farmers who have introduced some of those grasses to their pastures and to see the kind of time it takes to get their animals to market.
Yeah. But generally, for the local cattle industry and the little players within the industry, apart from the big boys, pasture development is not on the cards. You lose the cows, they go into find their own grass and so on, come home back in the afternoon. How do you plan to encourage? I think that if we're talking about an overall development of the industry, we want to get the small guys with 20, 30 head perhaps to start feeding them their animals properly and to see grass as a crop that needs to be cultivated if they are to grow exponentially.
Well, there are some things that are blessings in disguise. And I know that at the present time we are supposed to be going through the throes of a El Nino type situation. And what has happened is that the small farmers in particular, recognizing that they don't have a lot of material, grass available, and with the help of the authority, has been able to utilize rice straw. That is a very good feed source, particularly for animals during the dry period. Here we've got 2 hay balers, and we made those hay balers available to farmers in regions 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the farmers, particularly the small farmers, have been able to bale hay and store store the hay, rice straw hay, and store it and utilize it during this dry period. And that has helped considerably. We are also looking at some other innovations, particularly, well, not particularly for the small farmers, where we've got some prototypes of hay dryers, basket dryers, that can dry just about a bale of hay. It will take about 3 days to dry it in both the rainy as well as the dry season. And again, we've put out some small wooden hay balers that the small farmers could use, and so that they could store material in the times when material is available, the rainy season, when you've got antelope grass growing all over the place, so they could harvest it and store it for the dry period. We recognize that it's going to be difficult for small farmers in particular to take land out of, say, rice or cash crops to put into pastures. We really don't want to be encouraging people to do that sort of thing. But at the same time, along the dams and the trenches and the canals, there is a lot of forest material available. And so what we are trying to do is to ask them to harvest that material, store that material, so that as the dry season comes along, or even the rainy season when there is flooding and the animals can't go out and graze, that they have something to ensure that the animals do get enough to eat during those periods.
Cattle producers in the region are beginning to recognize that intensively managed rotational grazing or management-intensive grazing can lower production costs, reduce animal stress, and boost the animal's immune system. Cattle are natural grazers. They possess the remarkable ability to digest plant carbohydrates that are generally indigestible to most other mammals. It is natural then to assume that grazing is the best way to supply a nutrient-dense diet to growing cattle. Dr. Joel Santiago is the Director of Tropical Seeds of the USA Division of Global Papilova of Mexico. He is in Guyana promoting the development of proper pastures on the pilot farms under the GLDA. He gave us an overview of his company's efforts in the development of genetic seeds for forage and legumes.
Tropical Seeds and Global Papilova is a genetic forage seed company. And the establishment about 15 years or so ago, out of the need for forage or tropical forage pastures for the third world. And so there was two brothers actually, an animal scientist and the other was a businessman. And the animal scientist had looked at over 80 species of the Brachyria. And during the slave trade, you would have known that many of the beddings for the slaves were species of Brachyrias. And so when they looked at that, they decided they were not going to, they'd taken out 50 to 100 more. And they looked at all of them and decided, well, they're going to try to crossbreed, to look for a hybrid. Because purebred, like Himalacola and those, or decumbents, was not sufficient. It does not do what we want them to do. And since Mexico to Argentina was facing the situation of milk and meat, and we needed a grass to be able to meet that need, and therefore when we began to look, so we signed an agreement with CIAT, Centro Internacional de Agricultura Tropical in Colombia, and so they do part of the plant breeding for us and we do the other part. And so what we have done in the last, we've spent almost 10 years in research, and then we've come out with the mulatto, which of course means a crossbreed. Then we came up with the mulatto 2, and then we began to add all the different other species. Today we have over 36 species of forest grass, and we are precisely in over 57 countries around the world. And this is important because for the tropical countries like Mexico to Argentina, we had to change the dichotomy of how farmers rear meat and milk. And so we began producing legumes and forages and grass. And the end result was that we reduced the cost of, in the dairy industry, from Mexico to Argentina, we reduced the cost of concentrate that is used in livestock or the dairy industry. And then we take this over to the beef cattle. How could we put pound for pound, a pound of meat or a kilogram of weight or meat per day per animal? And it was the hybrid grasses that we work with.
According to Dr. Santiago, his country has a presence in more than 52 countries worldwide, and the focus is now on the Caribbean.
And so I began to look at how do I help the Caribbean. And so I started in Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. And these are similar soils to what you have in Guyana. And we started in French Guyana. And so what we have seen is that it took Jamaica almost 5 years to really decided that grass is a crop. And until you see grass as a crop, you wouldn't look at pastures or improved pastures to invest into it. But when you invest, when you put money, you spend money, and that's something with farmers, as wealthy as they be, sometimes they don't like to spend. And you see it. If you go to some countries in the Caribbean, you see some cattle ranches and farms. You see big farm, big houses, lots of animals, and no pastures or no fencing. And you go to Latin America and you see no vehicle, a man riding a donkey or a mule. And when you go to the pastures, it's just overhead sprinklers, big guns, and that's the difference, is that they've invested into pastures, and they've took a long time, but they've arrived. I think it's the Caribbean time now. Guyana has the best position in the CARICOM countries, even though that Jamaica has gone ahead in pastures, but Guyana has it got the land mass, it has the intermediate savannas. And the grasses that we carry, for example, today we're going to look at the Mombasa. And it's a panicum species, so it's like a king grass, it's like a cane. The only difference is that the digestibility in it is superb. While you'll have the Pennisetum purpureum or the king grass also would carry 6% protein, this is carrying 16%, up to 16% protein. But the digestibility is over 66. And that's really important for us and for many farmers. You want to know when a cow go out there, it eats the grass, it digests, and it put on meat or milk. And that's what the end result, what the farmer wants. Can I make money? The answer is yes, you can make money here. You got to invest into your pastures. Pastures is a crop. It's just like growing tomatoes in a greenhouse or growing rice, that you look at the agronomy, you said, okay, I got to do the soil analysis, I got to see what is the deficiency in the soil, how can I build the soil up, and then how can I best utilize the science that goes with the agronomy. And it's the same go with forages. And so I think Guyana is on the right track right now. It couldn't have happened at a better time.
The Mombasa Guinea grass is a tall grass similar to antelope, which is the grass of choice, introduced to Guyana over 4 decades ago, and is very suitable for cut and carry. It is highly productive, a leafy grass, producing between 20 and 40 tons per hectare of dry matter per year. Its crude protein levels are 8 to 12% crude protein on poor soils and 12 to 14% on better soils. This is the grass that is now being introduced to Sundarban Ranch at Cane Grove, Mahika, owned by Mr. Hari Prasad Ramsewak. This ranch is one of the 10 cattle operations in partnership with the GLDA and is among the top 3 farms in the country in terms of modern innovations and commitment. Sundarban Ranch boasts just over 300 head of cattle, but also has a significant mix of sheep and goats. Total ranch size is 434 acres, a former swampy area known as Georgie Pasture in the Cane Grove, Mahika. There are currently 150 acres of land under antelope grass, another 10 acres under tana grass. Now Sundarban Ranch has set aside more than 70 acres for the Mombasa grass trial. land preparation for grass cultivation is as meticulous as preparations for rice. Same degree of attention to roaming, chipping, soaking, leveling, etc. This was no different for this 75-acre plot. With the weather holding, work on preparation of the land for sowing of the Mombasa grass seed went ahead without a hitch. Sundarban's owner is no ordinary rancher. His attention to detail is unparalleled in the cattle industry. Most farmers would be satisfied with the traditional methods of land prep, but not Mr. Ramsey Wack. He trucked in hundreds of tons of burnt paddy shells and spread across the lands he intended for grass pasture. These were then ploughed in.
What we're doing here is that we're doing some land leveling and we're using the burnt paddy shell ash, which is Cure One, the Cure One, and we adding put in like about 6 inches on this land because this paga soil it tends to have a lot of acid in it, and when we plant the grass and we don't put this ash, we get a hard time to grow the grass. When the grass reaches like about 3 weeks to a month old, the grass tends to start to get yellow and dying down and using too much fertilizer. And over there you can see we did a 30 acres and we use the burnt ash, and that is why we have seen that the burnt ash is working. So we want to prepare a next 30 acres here, and we're using the dry weather now as an opportunity to enter into land and try to get it to prepare. So we're trying here to do a 30 acres.
Dr. Santiago thinks this addition to the soil is a good intervention.
That's noble. So again, I would like to say that this is a good soil amendment. Our grasses are designed for acid soils, and it will perform here tremendously good. It's aggressive, and so it will do what we designed it to do. And this is basically to give the animal a good nutrition, put on weight, improve milk production. And so we've changed the dynamics from Mexico to Argentina, how farmers farm in produces milk and produces beef.
In his first attempt at sowing an 8-acre plot, Mr. Ramsey Wack utilized paddy as the medium for the dispersal of the seed using a spreader. However, this effort failed and the seed with paddy was sown by hand. The soil was later raked. 10 days later, an inspection of the field revealed that while the paddy seeds had sprouted some 3 to 4 inches, the Mombasa seeds were mere sprouts. Dr. Santiago later explained that raking had buried the seeds and thus hindered growth. He was on hand to supervise and oversee the sowing of the second batch of seed.
But what we've done, we had to find a carrier to carry the seed because it's very thin. Let me show you what I meant, what is meant by that. It's very, very, very thin. And so therefore we're using a carrier. So if you look in here, you can see we've done the mixing, and this fertilizer will act as a spreader, as a carrier, and then we'll have equal distribution. So yes. We're excited right now because what we saw there in the field just now is that the grass is really kicking up. So now we've leveraged, so we're going to hit it now.
Also on hand, as always, was Mr. Ramsey Wack. He spoke to us on his first effort.
As you can see behind of me, we broadcast about 8 acres 2 weeks ago, and you can see it coming up there already. So we're going to do about 20 acres today, 25 acres. But today we are going to do it with the fertilizer, using the fertilizer
as a spreader,
to give us coverage. And also this is TSP. So as soon as the grass starts to grow, it already get some fertilizer.
Preparation of the remaining fields continued and sowing of antelope grass was also advanced. 25 days after the first batch of Mombasa seed was sown in an 8-acre plot using paddy as the medium, it was clear that the Mombasa grass had taken hold, even though the paddy had sprouted and was the dominant foliage visible. Across the second area sown with Mombasa, germination had occurred, but 17 days later, growth seemed retarded. But 2 weeks later, this area too showed strong growth of the Mombasa grass. The cultivation of Mombasa grass is new to Sundarban Ranch. The main grass of choice is the highly aggressive antelope grass.
What I'm planning, if we get these 4 blocks here, right, and we do the rotation grazing, these 4 blocks can take we 1 month, 1 week in one week, 1 week, 1 week, and we only need 4 hours grazing per day. Only 4 hours. 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 hour grazing. And then take the cows back in the paddock, in the pen, and feeding them between 7 to 10 pounds. Feed each cow 7 to 10 pounds of feed. This grass is about 25 days now, this, and got about 20 to 24 inch. And 10 days ago, this grass was just like 12 inch. 10, 12 days ago. So it's very easy to understand that once you prepare and have everything right, you can get this antelope grass from last grazing to as this day 25 days and ready to graze again, because we're doing rotation grazing in these paddocks. This is paddock 1 and we have paddock 2. In this paddock here, you can see we have about 25 acres here. And this is the antelope, and this grass here is about 45 days old. And we are keeping this for our planting material, because we will get planting material here to do in excess of 75 acres. We have about 75 acres which we are presently preparing, so we will have here all the planting material from here.
This is what is termed the clinic paddock, a pasture dedicated to animals that seem under the weather. This area was recently cleared and the soil re-engineered with the incorporation of burnt ash from the rice mills. It was then plowed, chipped, roamed and leveled. Then, using planting material from a nearby antelope pasture, the entire paddock was hand-planted. Today, there has been remarkable growth of the antelope grass in this paddock. The hand-planting method of establishing this pasture was at the direction and supervision of the GLDA. To date, a total of 220 acres of land at Sundarban Rice and Cattle Ranch have been placed under grass cultivation. The aim is for some 300 acres to be dedicated to pastures. The preparation of silage using a mixture of chipped grass, rice straw and molasses is also being pursued, and will come in handy during the wet season, when flooded fields will be the order of the day. 2 Sundays ago, Agriculture Minister Noel Holder, Permanent Secretary George Jervis, and top GLDA officials toured the Sundarban Ranch and viewed firsthand the operations there. Minister Holder was shown the resulting animals from the various interventions of the GLDA, including artificial insemination and embryo transfers, and later toured the various grass pastures, including the new Mombasa variety. The minister expressed satisfaction at the results of the many interventions of the GLDA and at the efforts of Sundarban Rice and Cattle Ranch.